Hi everybody, I'm making this video just to give a little bit background about SailPoint implementation that I created recently. Um, this is the implementation, or this is a bit of a pre-production or non-production version of the SailPoint tool itself that I was able to create. I'm just gonna walk you guys through it to show you what I implemented and what possibilities or what features we can achieve using the SailPoint tool itself. So first of all, this is the home page. I'm logged in as the administrator. Right now I have a bunch of applications that I deployed here. So one of them is Active Directory. It's based on Microsoft Active Directory software itself. Here, as you can see, the application type is set to Active Directory. And if I go further into configuration, here most of the configuration is local, as it is deployed on localhost. I have two object types here. One is user account and the other one is group. For both, I have mentioned identity attributes, display attributes, descriptions, and all the attributes that this connector application has. Moving on to provisioning policies itself, I have created a bunch of forms. For example, to enable an account, to disable an account, to create an account itself. This has bunch of attributes whose values are whose values are required, and most of these attributes values I have set up rules to fill on those values. For example, for distinguished name, for account distinguished name, I wrote a rule that states that if a user is an employee, it will be sent to employees OU, organizational unit, under Active Directory, and if it's a contractor, it will be provisioned to the contractor's OU respectively. Let me save it. Further, if we go to, for example, employee number itself, as you can see, same type of rules that pre-populate the values. The main goal here is to automate a user provisioning process so that least amount of human usage or least amount of human input is required here. Let me save it. Moving further to correlation, I have set up a correlation where application attribute, for example, employee number from this application connector correlates with employee ID, that is a SailPoint Identity IQ attribute. This is used for when we are trying to aggregate users from Active Directory over to SailPoint Identity IQ platform itself. Moving further, these are all the accounts that are provisioned to Active Directory. This was Active Directory itself. Moving further to Wintel application, this is a database application based over JDBC connector type. Again, most of the configuration or settings are based on localhost, as I have deployed everything over localhost. As you can see, I have written a bunch of SQL statements. These are to provision or to aggregate data from Wintel application over to SailPoint Identity IQ itself. So what this particular query is doing here is that it's giving us a table of attributes, a table that is joined between Wintel user membership and our Wintel users. So basically the list of all the memberships or list of all the groups that set of users are member of. Again, here also I have two object types. For example, one is account, user account, and the other one is group. Moving further, yes, in provisioning policies, again I have created a simple form. The values are pre-populated as I showed you earlier. Same goes for correlation here. I have set up a correlation between connector applications attribute and the identity attribute from SailPoint Identity IQ. Under rules, there is something quite interesting. I have created bunch of rules, for example, to create a user, to enable a user, to disable a user, to delete a user, to modify it. If we go into these rules, again, these are these are some. So for example, this particular rules runs this query using prepared statements, and what it basically does is it inputs the value from false. This is to enable, right? So it inputs the value for inactive is equals to false, as it states 1 for question mark number 1, and the native identity of the user, that goes at place number 2, which is for question mark number 2. So this rule itself enables and disables, only enables a user when it's running. There we go. This was database application. The next one is ServiceNow web services based application. This particular application is based upon OAuth 2.0. I have a ServiceNow instance running as of now. I think I'll have to log in. Oh my god. Okay, no problem. Let me quickly log in. Yeah, so these are a bunch of users that I provisioned from SailPoint Identity IQ over to ServiceNow itself. Going back to our application, yes, it's based on OAuth 2.0. And yes, so for this particular app connector applications, in order to create users, we have to run REST API operations. For example, in order to create a user account, I have to run a post operation on the table that is sys_user, and in this I'm sending data and extracting values from the plan itself. For example, here plan.username, plan.employee number, plan.password, plan.email, plan.active. So I'm extracting values from the provisioning plan and sending it into the request itself. Yes, and then the response from the post, I'm receiving a response that is the sysID. The sysID is the ID for the user that was created, and yes, so this is the ID from the response being correlated or being set as value for the schema attribute, that is sysID. This is the response code that we're expecting. The interesting thing here, one other interesting thing here that I'm doing is to fetch all the roles and all the group membership that a user is assigned to. I am running this get object operation. Under this operation, yes, I am retrieving the user ID from the native identity itself, and then using this request response from this request to set attributes received in response to the schema attributes, and then using this whole operation as a parent operation for another operation called fetch group membership. In here, as you can see, the previous operation is being used as a parent operation, and the value that we received from previous operation, that is sysID or the ID for the user, is being extracted from response of this operation and is being used here. And the response, what do we get in the response? We get all the values of the groups that user was provisioned to, and all the values are being stored in user groups attribute of the connector application. Same goes with the roles itself. Response from the first fetch user details operation is being used here as input, and then the response from here is being used to set value for schema attribute for user's role, all the roles that are assigned to this particular user. Let me save it. Again, more operations: remove entitlement, remove group entitlements, disable account, enable account, add roles, add groups, fetch roles, fetch group details. Again, here also I have three objects. One is user account, the other one is groups, and the third one is roles. So here we have three object types. So for users, I am using attributes, for example, user groups and user roles of type roles, for example, of object type role itself, and groups are of object type groups. So this is how the relation between roles and groups is being established with the users. If I go further into provisioning policy, I have the same user, the provisioning form. Values are pre-populated, and the correlation is the same, and then I'm just gonna save it. Yes, and I have a LDAP based application connector itself. Application type is set to someone direct LDAP. This is also based on localhost, and again I'm using two object types. One is account and the other one is group. The provisioning policies, under provisioning policy, again the form is set, and the correlation is also over here. Moving further, I'm gonna go back. I think we have discussed a lot about connector applications that I have set up right now. If I go further, let's just say if we have a user that we need to, let's just find a user that doesn't have any assigned role or application. Let's say this user, Robert Brown, who is an employee, lives in Austin, and doesn't have any, just have two applications assigned to it. But let's see, and as a part of accounting managers and enterprise directory. Okay, let me copy its username. If I go into manage user access, and for example, if I want to provide access, Robert Brown, if I want to provide access for multiple roles, and so these are the list of all the entitlements that I can provide this user access with. I can filter these applications based on entitlements based upon which applications they belong to. For example, let's say Active Directory, and then hit search. Okay, so under Active Directory we have these four entitlements. Two of them are classified as high risk items. We'll talk about this a little bit further. For example, now I'm going to provide access to this user to this entitlement, as if you remember from a little bit earlier, this user did not have access to Active Directory application. But right now, if I am assigning access to this entitlement, it's gonna automatically provide and provision this user to this connector application as well. As you can see, the request is submitted. If I go over to track my request, it is still in provisioning. I'm gonna go ahead under tasks. Excuse me. I'm gonna run perform identity request maintenance task. This task basically we can runs on schedule every hour to refresh all the identities that are being provisioned or being aggregated. If I go to task results, yes, request scanned 9. As you can see, this is complete, and now this user has access to not only the application but the entitlement itself as well. Let me save it. Moving further, I'm gonna talk a bit more about, let's see, roles. So in here I have created a bunch of roles. Some of these are based upon applications, and some of these are based upon the security department. For example, this role I created is called Information Technology Security Department. As you know, SailPoint provides the option with two types of roles. One is business role and one is IT role. Under here I have created both of them, and what I have basically done is the business role encapsulates the IT role itself. So if I go to IT role, if I go to edit, so what this IT role is doing under entitlements, it's providing access to this entitlement from this application, PD manager's entitlement from enterprise app and enterprise directory application, input entitlement from track WS application, and a business stakeholder entitlement from ServiceNow connector application. So basically, using one function or using one particular role, we are trying to provide streamlined role-based access control, or we are streamlining providing accesses based upon a particular role. So access to these 4 applications and these 4 entitlements using one single role. If I submit it, save it, and then this role is encapsulated under business role. So if I go under edit role, yes, so it encapsulates auditor IT role that we were just discussing earlier. And assignment, let me talk about assignment true. So what we can do here is that we can provide access, we can assign this role to a list of population. So let me go to population and create a new population. So for example, here I had created a population earlier. So the rules for this population, advanced analytics, refine search. I'm not sure what I was doing earlier. Okay, so let me create a new population. So I want all the users that belong to finance department that have a job title of, let's say financial planning analyst, and are an employee, not a contractor. And if I look for these users, I can see there are 4 users. Let me refine search and get their names as well, first name and last name. Yes. Oops. Yeah, so it's Stephanie Torres, Rebecca Peterson, Raymond James, and Susan Martin. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save this list as a population, and instead of information security team, I'm gonna save it as a finance and list team. Let me save it. Going back to the role, so based upon their job titles, what we are doing here is providing them access to this role, finance analyst team, submit, which further encapsulates these roles which provide access to these applications and these entitlements. Before I run the tasks to provide the accesses, let's just see what kind of access and what kind of entitlements these users have right now. So as you can see, this user doesn't have any entitlement and access to just one application. So once we run the tasks to assign this role, this user should have access to 4 applications, plus this one makes 5 applications, and all the entitlements that were interlinked to that role. So let me save it for now, and I'm gonna go to tasks, and I'm gonna run the refresh identity cube job to refresh all the identities, and I'm gonna run a full text index refresh. Once these tasks have been executed, then the tasks, yes. Now let's go back and let's go to the population that we created, and let's see how access is being provided to these users. Yes, we are back at Stephanie Torres. Earlier she only had access to one application. If I go further, as you can see, now she has access to all the applications that we were mentioned under auditor business role, and access to all the entitlements we mentioned under auditor business role. So if I go into these applications under ServiceNow, even though I only provide access to one entitlement, these roles are interlinked. So user got access to these roles which were a prerequisite for the entitlement mentioned under ServiceNow application, and the user has access to all the entitlements that we mentioned in the auditor business roles. So this is how we can use role-based access management to provide accesses based on job titles, based upon department, based on job title, and based upon user type. Moving further, we have talked about roles. Let me talk about policies as well. I have created some custom policies. So for example, before I even talk about policies, let me talk about classification. So let me talk about classification. Yes. Let me go to debug page, and let's go for classification. Oh no, my spelling's incorrect, apologies. Classification, yeah. So I have created 4 type of classifications. So one is called GXP relevant, high risk item, highly sensitive items, PHI, and SOX relative. Yes, let me find, yeah, this is the code used for all those classification that I reviewed earlier. Let's go back. So what these classification do is we can assign them to our high risk, or we can assign them to relevant roles, groups, or any type of entitlements to mark them as classified, or basically give them a tag. For example, here I have given it a high risk classification tag. If I go into policies, I can restrict access to entitlements based on these classifications itself. So for example, I have made a policy that states that no contractor should have access to a classified item. So here under policy rules, I created a rule which was again a coded rule. Let me see if I can show you. This is contractor policy violation rule. Contractor policy violation rule. Yeah. Yes, if I open this rule, so what this rule basically is doing is, so this particular rule is, first of all, so this particular rule is going through classifications that were assigned to a particular user or a particular contractor. So for example, the first thing that we are checking here is that if the employee type is equals to contractor and yes, so if it's a contractor, we are moving further, and then we are checking, then we are getting creating links and receiving all the links that belong to this particular identity. Yes, so if this contractor doesn't have any links or doesn't have any classified entitlements assigned to him, we return empty, we return policy violation as empty or null. But again, if not, we move further, then we are checking list of roles assigned to this particular user, to this particular identity. And when we are in roles, we are looping it to check for classification tags. So for example, list get classifications, get all the classification tags from the role that we are checking right now. If it's empty, if there are no classifications assigned to this particular role, it breaks off. But again, if we find that there are some entitlements that that are classified and assigned to this user, yeah, so we are adding it to has classification is equals to 2, and then further returning the violation. We are setting the violation, we are setting the owner of the violation, and then returning the violation. So that is what this basic rule is doing. It is checking for contractors who have access to classified information. Once this is done, yes, so for now, if I want to check who are the users that have who violated, who are under policy violations, let's see, under advanced analytics. So most of my policy violations for now are related to contractors. So I'm just gonna go ahead and run a search for contractors. Find search, I'm gonna search for assigned roles and then applications. Yes. Yeah, so for example, so the account payable role and Wintel IT role is a classified item. Yes. So this user is a member of this particular group, which has a classification of SOX relevant. So right now, the approach that we are using to define policy violations is a detective approach. In this case, for example, if I go to this user, and manager for this user is Maria White. If I copy her username and try to sign in using her username, and as you can see, her sub-employees or her team has 3 policy violations. For example, for Amy Cox, yes, all these violations are related to Amy Cox user itself. Okay, so in this case, we are using a detective approach, and then, for example, here, no contractor should have access to account payable. I can either, so what I did in this policy was, I was comparing to one identity attribute and then the entitlement itself. So either ways, there are two options that we can do right now. Either we can remove her from the contractor category, or we can deprovision her the account payable entitlement. So here I choose to deprovision her and I revoke her access. I want to save this decision. And as you can see, it's gone from here. If I go back, log out, SP admin, okay. And if we go to Amy Cox, under entitlement, she no longer has access to this particular entitlement. As you can see, she no more has the access to that particular entitlement. Yes. Things will be more clear after I run the refresh identity cube job. Cox. Yeah, she still doesn't have access to rental yet. So that is how a manager, using those policy violations, a manager can restrict access or revoke access because of a policy violation. The other approach that we can use in this case is a preventive approach, in which what we can do is that we cannot, what we can do is that we cannot let users submit a request that has policy violations in it, basically. So if I go to business processes, under LCM provisioning, and under process variables advanced view, if I look for Control F, policy scheme, yes. So here what I have mentioned right now is continue even with the policy violation. But if I change it to interactive, let's see what happens when I change it to interactive. I'm gonna save it here. Same provision has been saved. I'm gonna go find a contractor. I'm gonna go find somebody who's a contractor. Let's see, how about okay, Paul Walker. So let me copy his email, employee ID and username. Let me go back. Let me log in as this individual or user. So if I log in as this user and I try to gain access to a classified item, that is, for example, account payable here. So as you can see, we have an error message that say policy violation will occur. No contractor should have access to. So basically these three policies will be violated if the user decide to submit for this entitlement. In this case, user can still choose to required as part of job. He can still submit with violations by giving a reason why he needs the access itself. Okay, but right now, in this case, if I go back under identities, if I try to see this user and see who his manager is, and then log in as his manager, policy violation, no. I have to see who is the owner of that policy, who will have the access to approve for that. Yes, it's SP admin. Yes, as you can see, the Paul Walker requested access for the classified entitlement by providing this reason, whatever the reason was. So in this case, yeah, here is the reason. In this case, I can either the administrator or the owner of that particular policy can either choose or deny, or can either choose to or deny this request. So in this case, if I choose to deny, I go back and then under track my requests, it's going to be denied. So that is how we can use policy violation again to restrict access. Furthermore, I remember during one of my interviews with Best Buy, I was presented with a question of what will happen or how we can move data from a legacy system over to SailPoint itself. I have a sort of I kind of came up with a solution that might work. Most of the legacy softwares or legacy solutions can write or can generate a report of the users or the data that they have. So in this case, in some cases, we can use that data and parse it to make that data useful in order to aggregate it with provisioning with SailPoint or any other identity and access platform. So in this case, I kind of have presented that solution. So I created similar list of users. Let's see where it's downloads, data files, HRMS. Yes, so under here I have a list of users that are employees. So this is a CSV file. Data is arranged based upon their employee ID, first name, and all these attributes, followed by the data itself. Same goes for contractors. So I am using these two data files or delimited files, and I created a connector application. For example, two different connector applications for employee and contractor, and I am trying to aggregate the data from those delimited file over to SailPoint itself. Right here, yeah. For example, if I open this employee file and then edit with Notepad, let's go down and I try to create a new user. Let me just change the name to something else. So Craig Stanley, and let me provide change his user ID as well. I'm not going to change the rest of it, I'm just going to change the names and his user ID. So let me save it. So I can go over to tasks and run account aggregation task. So this task basically brings the data from that delimited file over to SailPoint system, SailPoint Identity IQ itself. So if I run and execute this task, as you can see, it was successful and we were able to bring that user that we just created. Right here, this is his user ID and identity warehouse, and if I go ahead, as you can see, Craig Stanley, we were able to bring this particular user from a delimited file or from a data file over to SailPoint itself. So that is how we can use, we can still use legacy system to aggregate the data with SailPoint Identity IQ itself as well. I was creating a SailPoint business process for custom joiners that further provides, so what I was trying to do here is edit step. Yes, I'm just gonna take this and then I'm sorry, I'm gonna go Java. Yes, so what I was trying to do was, so once the user, yeah, so so what I was trying to do is I was trying to create a custom lifecycle event. So for example, for a joiner to provide birthright access. So how I can provide birthright access is by using that business process itself. So let's just say that business presents us with a problem or something that we need to do is that when a user joins an organization, he should have access. When an employee joins this organization, he should have access to say Active Directory and another LDAP, Enterprise Directory applications as well as a part of his birthright access. So in order to accomplish that, I created this Java rule, a workflow rule. What this rule is doing, it's creating a provisioning plan, as you can see, and then based upon if this user is an employee or contractor, we are assigning the user to its particular we're providing this user with a particular distinguished name that contains where the user will be created in Active Directory and in LDAP itself. So basically it's the path where the user data will reside after provisioning, based upon if it's contractor or if it's an employee. Further, we are using our application's name, for example Active Directory, creating account request, and then using set operation method to provide set operation method to set the operation as create operation. I also had set the native identity as the distinguished name that we found here. Furthermore, I'm using this account request to assign data for the attributes by using attribute request itself. For example, object type, its user given name. I'm using identity dot get first name operation to method to get this data, extract the data from the identity itself. And once the attribute request data is in these attribute request objects, I am assigning these objects to the account request, and then I am assigning the account request to the plan itself. Same goes for the LDAP application right here. And once the data is assigned, I'm printing the plan, and then I'm returning the plan. So as a result, when this business process gets executed, a new joiner has automatically, as a part of his birthright access, has access to Active Directory and Enterprise Directory as well. For this one, I'm still working on it, on the final steps, how the other business processes or the other steps are gonna how the other steps are gonna formulate. I'm still working on it, but yeah, this is basic overview what I'm trying to achieve here. Again, this is not a production level setup, but I have tried to cover everything that most of the things I think that are essential part of the SailPoint Identity IQ setup itself. The last thing I think I wanted to discuss is about groups. Here we have different type of containers that we can use to specify a type of users. For example, we have populations. I think I showed you how population works. Based upon our advanced analytics or based upon certain criteria, we can create a population of users that satisfies that criteria and use it to assign role-based access control, or to assign it to policies itself. The last container I think I talk about is work groups. So what work group is, for example, here I've created a work group called SailPoint Administrator Approval Work Group. So this work group have 4 members, and administrator is the owner of this work group. So I have used this work group as a part of this entitlement. So basically what I'm trying to do here is that anybody who tries to get access to SailPoint administrators group, first of all needs to be approved by any one member of this group. So for example, let's go ahead and go to Identity Warehouse and pick a user. I'm gonna pick this user. So if I try to log in with this user, and then this user wants to go ahead and get access to the SailPoint administrators group, go ahead, and I'm going to submit it. Yes, it's already submitted. I'm going to log out, go back, and as you can see, so this request to SailPoint administrators entitlement and enterprise directory is awaiting approval from our work group. So if I go ahead and look for Adam Kennedy, who is a member of our work group, Adam Kennedy or anybody, we can go with Benjamin Hicks as well. Can I open from here? No, it's okay. Never mind, I'm just gonna go search for identities. Benjamin, apologies for my spellings. Yes, Adam Kennedy. So Adam Kennedy is also a part of that work group. I'm gonna log out and log in as Adam Kennedy. Oh, my bad. As you can see, there is one approval waiting for Adam Kennedy. In this case, any one member of this work group can either approve or deny the request. So if we go ahead and choose to approve this request, Gonna go back, log in as administrator, and now you can see that request is provisioning. So if I go ahead under tasks and run the refresh identity cube job and perform identity request maintenance, I come back and the request should be completed. That's right. And now that user identity, where did we? Was it Robert Brown? Joseph Thompson. Should have access to SailPoint administrators group from enterprise directory application. So that is how we can set different approval processes for different type of entitlements and applications itself. So it all depends upon the owners, who the owner of that particular application is, who becomes the approver. So all in all, this covers some of what SailPoint is capable of and how we can use it to benefit our organization in developing flow of data from service providers to SailPoint Identity IQ itself, and then further provisioning it to other service providers. What are the steps that are required to achieve it? How role-based access controls helps, how policy violations help, how our advanced analytics and report generation helps, how we can use population to define a set of users depending on their department and job title, and then use those population to provide accesses to business roles and IT roles, or basically use those population to use that population for role-based access control. Yeah, so that's all for now.